Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to the website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one from that webpage, in which people have been stepped through the worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on it, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. And if you have any of those to share with us, please do so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. You can also join us live if you're so inclined. Zoom.us is the platform we're using, and once you get there, open up a meeting or request to join a meeting, and the meeting ID for the first hour is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. And we're very grateful whenever anybody does that, because whether you join us live or send us an email, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just much, much easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. And so today, I would invite either Susan or Don to unmute and let me know, how's the sound quality today? As you might notice, there's a different setup here if you have picture.
Yeah, it's not as good.
It's fine for me.
Don, are you there?
Yeah, it's
Susan,
not.
are you there?
It's not
Yes.
as. It's not as good.
There. If you're talking, please just keep talking for a moment while I try and figure out what's going wrong on my end.
Hi,
It
Don.
does not allow me to
Hi.
hear you.
Hello.
All right.
I want the output going to my built-in speakers. Well,
Hello.
now do you hear me? Don?
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Technical difficulties abound.
What's the new setup, Tim?
He doesn't hear us.
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, so my comment is the sound quality wasn't as good, but what I can tell is when you're close to the microphone, then it's fine. When you're too far back, it's not fine.
Okay, so the problem is that
Good.
the headset that I normally use died this morning. It probably died during the interview I did with Roman Wyden. And I tried to rig up the old system I had here that involves, an Audient mixer, monitor, USB, external microphone, transforming filters, blah, blah, blah. So it didn't work. So we're back to just whatever the MacBook can present for today. And hopefully this will get us through.
Yeah, I think it's fine now.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And thanks for the note yesterday or the comment yesterday about enjoying the book from Guy Finley, which we'll get back to shortly. I listened to yesterday's hour, and Susan Bingham was on there and asked a probing question that never got answered. And she didn't ask it of me, but I will offer my answer. The answer, or the question is, in the phrase original sin, we know what the sin means, and energy that's off the mark. What does the original part mean in that phrase? And
that's the question. Yeah.
And that's the question. And the answer I have for that, that's come down through all these spiritual teachings, it seems to be the same in just about every one, is the original error was we decided to judge. We decided to pretend we're separate from our Creator, and then we decided to judge that was a fearful thing to do, and then we decided to judge this is right, that is wrong, and that's the original error. The original part is we chose to believe our perceptions through the five senses rather than our internal connection to Source. And we chose to doubt this actuality that we're created as part of the flow of life, and we're not separate from it. We're not separate, as Einstein would say, through the modifications that Dr. Michael Ryce has made to this quote. If you think you're separate or separated from anyone or anything, you're living in an optical delusion.
So Tim.
Yes.
I thought it was because we ate the apple. We just disobeyed. We were bad.
Okay, but now remember this idea that the stories that were told back then through many traditions, maybe not all, but many of them, they were allegory, they were parable, they were metaphor. They were not intended to be interpreted literally. And that teaching, one of the ways that I heard it as I was growing up was that Adam and Eve ate of the fruit that came from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So when they began to judge, this is right, that is wrong, when they began to do what Michael Singer talks like about push away some things that happen and grab onto other things that happen in our mind, we create the turbulence that we experience later as the negative emotions and the suffering. And it isn't that there is any part of life that is good or bad, as Shakespeare would say, but thinking makes it so. That's the same wisdom. Rumi says, out beyond labels of good and bad, right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you out there. That's our true nature. That's the Planck's constant energy. That's the quantum field. That's the actuality without human beings judging and labeling and putting words on. So it's not an act of disobedience that was our fall from, it was our choice to disbelieve that we're safe. Our choice to opt for fear over love. And if you listen back to the show from yesterday when Andrea was doing her work and Michael was responding, there's a point at which Andrea starts talking about, she wants to know what she needs to do so that she doesn't have another car accident and another, abuse situation, another assault, etc. And in this body of work, Michael gave exactly the answer I would expect him to give after listening to him for 22 years or so. And that is, you don't prevent these things from happening, and yet you can change the fear you're generating right now, because right now it's not happening. And yet if you sit here with enough fear and you don't work at the origins of the fear within yourself, and you keep pouring your mind energy into the fear, the way the system is set up, you're not supposed to be in that level of trauma. There's pain, Buddha says the essence of life is suffering, etc. But the source of that suffering is judgment, is preference, is I want this rather than that, rather than just, well, here's what life is bringing me. How do I respond in this moment in a way that can be the most loving and be a blessing to myself and others? There is only discernment in that approach.
Well, Tim,
Don't you call me.
sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Yes. Couldn't you say that I'm hitching, and that's great. You're hitching the allegory with the meaning it's supposed to convey. But Adam and Eve thought they needed something. They thought they needed what was something that they shouldn't have. Something in there is a link between a visceral, literal link between the story and the meaning of it. I guess it is judgment, insofar as they could be saying, we lack something, so we need the apple. The apple was pretty, it was shiny, or whatever it was. I'm trying to hitch the apple with judgment.
Right, but you're also trying to go into making it fit a literal circumstance of a naked man and naked woman in a perfect garden who listen to the talking snake rather than their creator. I mean, it's just, please understand that until we find the actual archaeological evidence of the garden and those two people as the original and only progenitors of all humanity, and evidence of what the snake was using to talk, let's just go with something that might be useful for us.
Okay.
So, just a minute, so I can respond to Don's text. When will yesterday's show be available on YouTube? Well, the second hour was made available this morning. Potatais had some technical glitches yesterday and would not let me upload my first hour of the Mindshifters Radio from yesterday. And so I only was able to do that this morning right before the internet show when they'd fixed their technology. So we need to leave some time, Don, between the time I upload it and then Jeanie needs to have the time to get to her computer and do whatever magic she does to make it show up on YouTube. So I hope that answers that question. So Susan, perhaps the most useful thing I can say to you here is cancel your need to be right, drop out of the conscious logical mind. Notice how that striving for words and analysis that lets you feel a certain way about these words is a trap. You might remember a conversation we had not too long ago about how fascinating it is that we talk in this work about the number one unhealthy or pseudo solution of this non-being mind, this egoic mind, is I'm going to figure it out. And then we spend 14 and a half or 14 3/4 years talking 1 hour a day for the first 8 years and 2 hours a day for the last 6 years, 6 3/4 years, talking and talking and talking about it. What's the point of that talking? And I'm glad to come back and say this over and over again. The point is simply to stir things up and to extend the invitation to each and every one of us to choose again, to choose for love over fear, to understand how we're creating suffering on top of the pain and discomforts of life, to find a way to discover whatever it is we're holding in our thought process or our energy system that prevents us from experiencing ourselves blissfully, joyfully, as this consciousness that contains everything we experience. And if my words help me do that, then I've gotten my time and money's worth. If my words can be used by someone else, then that's this idea of the ripple effect, and we're walking each other home. But there isn't any right or wrong in this. There isn't any good or bad in this. There is this practical set of actions we can take if we're willing to do it, which will usher us into an entirely different experience of life. And that's what's being offered, not the words. The words aren't being offered. Because as Michael points out, and even he was talking about it yesterday on the show, is that the words don't have any meaning. He even went so far as to say, I've never spoken, no one's ever spoken. We aren't talking. We're just sending out these vibrational waves with our voice, with the air coming out of our lungs over the vocal cords. And if that vibration triggers some movement of thought within you, and you recognize the thoughts you're having, you think you know what I said. You think you know what I meant. And now we're off to the races. Now we're on. Right there's the origin of every war we've ever had.
You know what, Dr. Tim?
What?
I think I got what you meant. And I got what the 9-bit mind wants to do, because if they can put words, they are okay. If they allow themselves to not need to put words, they might not be safe. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm feeling the difference between wanting to define and explain. It's like getting a handle on something. So anyway, that was good.
Well, and whatever you just said brought me to mind of what I was trying to say about Andrea, that she's generating fear. And she doesn't need to. You just said, if I can use words, then I'll feel safe. Which means if you're not generating the words, it means you don't feel safe. In other words, you've got fear. And that's an ideal target for the reality management worksheet, the EFT tapping, the sacred breath work, the love's breath, whatever you want to call it, from whichever teacher you know that does good breath work, the connected breathing or the still point breathing that Michael talks about, the targeted journaling that Michael calls a mind shifter. It's perfect target for any of those tools. The recognition that you want to put words on things so you'll feel safe. And when you can put a name on it and label on it, you feel better. Well, one option then is go ahead and put words on things and labels on them until you feel better. However, I would point out to you that you might want to look at how that's a drug of choice, just like alcohol or cocaine or anything else. And it hasn't gotten you to the root. What's the root? Something in your mind is generating the false belief that you're in danger, that your essence is vulnerable to being chipped, dented, rusted, faded, or broken in some way. And the essence of your nature is above and beyond all of that. The essence of your nature is that, yes, you're in this world, but the truth is your essence is not of this world. And the original error, the original sin, in quotes, is the belief that you're separated, that you're vulnerable, that your personal self, as Michael Singer talks about, he uses that phrase in his most recent podcast, which I'll probably play in the support group tonight. But your personal self, which means simply all your personal thoughts about yourself, is not your true self. Right? It's not your consciousness. It's just your thoughts about you. And as Michael likes to point out, my thoughts about me, where'd they come from? They were programmed in there, right? When I was born, I didn't have words to express my thoughts. I might have had thoughts, I might have had impressions, but they certainly weren't anything like what they've evolved into after my brain was programmed with the English language in the United States of America, different from the English language that those weirdos over in Britain use, right? I was programmed into the use of the English language in the middle 1950s in America. That's not enough. You also have to know Catholic family, dyed in the wool, absolutely true, all the way to death Catholics. That's who raised me. Nice people, that's another thing that needs to be considered. I was pre-programmed with thoughts about respect and fairness and love and compassion and giving, the joy of giving, etc. So all those things got programmed into my mind. So now what I think and what I want to have to make my world make sense follows that kind of a template, which can be, as you might understand, dramatically, radically different from what another infant was programmed with, even if they were born on the same planet in a different place, on a different continent, with a different culture and a different language, etc. So the language, the being able to put words on it, okay, right? It's like this past weekend, I had a headache on a Saturday morning that was significant, and I took some, NSAID and went back down for a nap. So you can work to find words that give you that temporary sense of comfort, but it's just a drug. I'm going to understand this is from the perspective of the flow of life and consciousness. It's just another fun game. It has no meaning other than the meaning you give it. Now, if you let these words sink in for the first time to a deeper level, you'll feel shaken. Why? Because what it means is everything you've ever thought and believed needs to be questioned and seen as just silliness, seen as just, as Michael was talking about yesterday, an image of an image of an image. It's many times removed from the flow of life itself. And some people really enjoy doing that. Just like some people really, really, really like to stay drunk all day until their liver gives out. Don is reminding us of the Bill Hicks talk about it's just a ride. It's all a ride. It's all just a ride. So, Andrea yesterday and on Friday was doing some really deep work. She's looking at all kinds of deep beliefs that she's downloaded, and she's using the tools. And then when a life situation comes along, like the meeting she was going to have with her other guru friend, teacher, it went dramatically different than it would have gone if she hadn't had the conversation with Michael, if she hadn't seen her own power person dynamic issues at play, if she hadn't been willing to take responsibility for the emotions she was generating and probably dissipate some of them before she went and had to talk with her teacher. And then she was coming from that wide open, honest space. As luck would have it, her teacher was coming from a wide open, honest space. And the result is not what you get when egos clash. When egos clash, you get separation. You get additional suffering. When loving consciousness goes into an interaction in life, asking to be taught, communicating for the purpose of feeling the connection between self and another, magic happens. It's like the quote from the Course in Miracles where it says, there's no place as sacred on the planet as a place where an ancient evil becomes a present love. And that's a very close approximation of saying there's no place as sacred on the planet as the place you're in when you dismantle your trauma energies or your power person dynamic or your false belief in separation, because love moves into your awareness. It's never been anywhere anyway, but love in your awareness, using your own mind energy and your ability to focus it as a creative force, it will create a different experience of life for you. So Susan, original and sin, that's the best I have for you, to address the issue that the original sin from several great traditions is this false belief that we're separate. And if you read or reread The Way of Mastery with that template in mind, looking for all of the different places where it says that very thing, you'll see it. It'll be right there in your face. When consciousness decided to play around with the concept of being separate from itself, that was the original error. And it's not any horrible thing. It's just, it's a part of what allows the system to flow. What system? The system of my experience of life. Or the system that allows each and every one of us to create an individual experience of life.
Can I introduce a whole other thing?
Yes.
I'm almost finished with Roman Wyden and you talking, your long interview. And I was amazed. He said two very different things. He said that he thought sensitivities that show up in people may be a sign that humans have evolved. It's a sign of an increasing evolution or something, or awareness. But he also said that difficult early childhood situations can cause a child to have ADHD, which is just a label. Anyway, first I just want to say it was a wonderful interview between the two of you because you just kept setting each other off. It was one of the most flowy, back and forth, almost falling all over each other to say the next thing because you'd been sparked. So it's fun to listen to. But so what do you think about the idea that it's both ADHD is caused by less than ideal situations for a child in a family that had some malfunctioning going on. And it could be a sign of evolution.
Well, so there's, the thing you're referring to about evolution, there are books that have been written where people are looking at the potential data points they can arrange and create a theory. And the theory is that we were hunter-gatherers before we were farmers. And whether that's true or not, the fact of the matter is, to be a really good hunter, you need a whole different set of activated brain patterns and executive functions than you do to be a farmer. Because, well, think about it in terms of when you're out on the hunt and you're not at the top of the food chain, you're in it somewhere. So you're hunting rabbits and deer, and tigers might be hunting you, or bears might be hunting you, or poison spiders, etc. So you need a level of hypervigilance that you don't need when you're plowing the field. Or, back then, remember, they weren't driving tractors. So it was all very manual labor. And so that's a theory. And as they look at the historical evidence of different tribes that were still fairly isolated and had not been affected by culture and what we call civilization, etc., and they start analyzing these people and looking for it, they say, okay, these people understand what you mean when you describe somebody with attention deficit disorder. You don't use the word attention deficit disorder, but you say, here's a person who has difficulty sitting still, and they hyperfocus sometimes and they get distracted easily. And well, if you talk to one of these people from these indigenous tribes, they recognize there's a certain percentage of their population that acts like that or has those traits. But it's not a problem. It's not labeled a disease. And so within the context of our culture and our sedentary, completely outdated educational system, this provides a set of roadblocks to somebody who might have the genetics in them that's more like the hunter. Because those people, they function best when they're up and moving about. There was a line in the old movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were trying to get a job guarding some gold shipment or whatever. And the old guy in charge said, okay, let me see if you can shoot. And he hands the gun to the Sundance Kid, and Sundance Kid goes to put it in his holster, and the old man goes, no, here. And he pulls the gun out and he hands it to him and says, here, just aim and shoot. And he shoots at a rock or something and he misses. And the old man scoffs and walks away. And the Sundance Kid says, can I move? And the old man says, what? Sundance Kid puts his gun back in the holster and says, can I move? And he says, well, okay. And he whips the gun out and fires off 3 or 4 shots, hitting the rock in midair and flying in this. So some people do better when they're moving, when they don't have to sit in a desk and listen rivetedly to one person while other chairs and desks are squeaking and kids might be passing notes or whispering. That just doesn't work for some people. It doesn't mean they're damaged. Right? The set of skills that make the world's best farmer do not necessarily make the world's best hunter. Skills, traits, right? Fundamental neural wiring, you might say. Today, today I went into a Costco today, and it's fascinating to me what happens to my senses when I go into a place like that. It's just like somebody just puts a cone over my head. and I can only look like right in front of me and a little bit off to either side because there's so many stimulants in that environment, so many people, so many noises, so many moving parts and flashing colors, and that my brain just wants out as soon as it can get out. And I routinely only go to those places when I think it's going to be an off hour and not completely flooded. But that's just the way I've always been. I remember going into stores with my mother and just craving getting back outside, get me out of this place. And I didn't know why, because that was way back before they had, big box stores and things and all 17 layers of fluorescent lights, etc. So anyway,
my grandson Charlie used to call that store sick. He'd say, "Orb, I'm getting store sick."
perfect.
And we, yeah.
Kid's a genius. He's a genius. That's a genius thing to say. So that's one thing. In that talk, he refers to the book, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. So people have been writing about that since at least the 1990s, maybe earlier. And what was the other point you were asking about?
Well, it was the other end of it. I mean, it was evolution on one side, meaning these kids are more developed than many of us. It shows a sign that humanity is evolving. And they're reacting to a rather coarse culture that hasn't evolved along with them. And the other one is that ADHD is caused by a malfunctioning family in early life of the child. It was just a contrast.
Well, and let's just get a little bit more accurate here. He's not saying ADHD, he's saying these patterns of behavior that had been labeled a disease process or ADHD, these patterns developed as an attempt at a healthy response to an unhealthy situation. You might call it traumatic, you might call it abusive, etc. And so, so many of these practically every thing that's labeled as a disease in the psychological and psychiatric profession is just that. It's a word that's intended as a shorthand for professionals to communicate. It's not intended to replace my awareness that I'm sitting here with Larry, and Larry is a person, and Larry has, a history that some things he really enjoyed in his life and some things he really had to struggle against and some things he found downright abusive. When I'm focusing on the person in front of me as a whole person, then the label ADHD, bipolar, depressive, anxious, none of it is relevant. And that was a big part of what Roman is trying to talk about. So the more we can move away from labeling people as damaged and broken and defective, and the more we can help them understand how they are experiencing the whole flow of life, how the flow of life is interacting differently with their personal traits and the way their mind works than it interacts with somebody else's personal traits and the way their mind works. And then it's not about good or bad, right or wrong. It's just, okay, this is how it's working. Let me see what I can do. Let me move in. Here's another situation that I would want to approach as this is the gift of life. I'm here. I woke up this morning. It's another gift. How am I going to react as the gift starts coming and flowing towards me? And every time the gift starts flowing in a way that isn't what I had hoped for or planned or created, it's so much more useful, as I'm learning over and over again in my life, instead of judging it as bad or wrong, just paying attention and saying, okay, this is happening. What's mine to do in this moment to be a blessing to myself and others? And that's where I put my mind energy. I refuse to jump into the judgment. I refuse to allow the old negative thought pattern to run or to be put in a high place of esteem. And I know it's coming through. The thoughts pass through my mind, and I just chuckle at them and put them over here at the kiddie table with some Oreo cookies and milk, and I come back to a loving thought. I come back to the breath. I come back to the realization that it's a miracle that I'm here and that I'm aware of any of this. I come back to my understanding that my essence, the essence of the truth of my being here, is that I don't need to do anything. I'm free to do whatever I want. And is evidenced by the fact that, somebody can. I just heard another story where a person had gone into a car dealership or a truck dealership and purchased a truck and kept it for a year or so, and then decided, you know what, I don't want to pay for this anymore. Drove it back to the dealership and left it there and took an Uber away. Decided, I'm not going to live into that obligation. It happens all the time. People file bankruptcy, people quit jobs. Now, again, the value in that teaching is not, okay, go ahead and just sit around and eat bonbons until you weigh 1,000 pounds while you watch your favorite TV show. That's not the point of that. The point of it is to understand that when I create a belief in my head that says, I need, and fill in the blank, I've created another error in thought based around I don't have choice. Every time I say I need something, it means I'm not free. And that's all they're trying to convey there. What does that mean? How am I going to change my life with that? Well, you know what? You may not change your life behaviors very much. You will dramatically change your life appreciation. I remember very powerfully a conversation we had with Julie Haverstick years ago on the internet show when we were still at 1 hour. And Julie is a person that Michael Rice has said has done more reality management worksheets than anybody on the planet, even him. I'm not sure that that's still the case because all kinds of people have been coming and going through the work since then. However, in this particular instance, we had a very powerful session on the internet show. At least it was powerful for me because she talked about how she caught herself thinking about, oh, darn, now I've got to go do this. Oh, now I've got to do that. Oh, I've got to get this done. Oh, I've got to get that done. Oh, I've been in trouble because I'm not going to be able to get that done. And she realized how much negative emotional energy she was generating and attaching to the phrase, I need to do this. And she thought, what would happen if I just trained myself to say, I'm going to choose to do this, or I get to do this is another good one. That's the key benefit that I see and find in the teaching. You need do nothing. They're not telling you stop doing everything you're doing. They're not telling you what you're doing has no value. It's just a deep spiritual teaching that's meant to get us to wake up to we get to choose. Let's face it. I got a few things going on in my life these days, and I made it here, and I had 15 or 20 extra minutes, and I was going to upload the podcast from last weekend that Susan Bingham's talking about, and the technology is not working. It wouldn't let me do that. I was trying to record an intro, and it wouldn't record. So I'm troubleshooting. Why isn't it recording in this piece and that? All right, so then I have a wonderful, fairly expensive headset that's got both earpieces and a different boom mic. I tried it, can't get it to work. Okay, scrap that plan. I was on the third plan, and that's what we started the internet show with here. And I had the thought, very solid thought, this isn't working. I need to just scrap the show for today. I could easily have just texted a few people and said, I'm sorry, the technology is not working. Try me tomorrow. I had the choice. We don't think in those terms. We think, I have to. We're programmed in the judgments and the shoulds. So the teaching that says you need do nothing is simply a clarion call to wake up to the fact that you are always choosing. You are always choosing. So there you have it. I'm not sure what the heck I was just saying or how we got there, but so Susan Bingham, did I leave you hanging with an unanswered question? I know you started talking about the interview with Roman. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah, it doesn't matter. He was just thinking out loud, probably. I have made a mental picture in my mind of a person like his son, very, very active, very creative, very bright, but not fitting into the schoolroom, classroom model very well, and maybe not fitting in other ways. Roman said, I actually think people who are like this are more evolved than others. However, and then much later in the show, you talked about how people who are like this have been hurt. They lacked some kind of parental input that they would need. So here you've got a kid who's very evolved but was hurt. Does it mean I was just amazed or just noticed the two different thoughts about that, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive really, but I'm certainly hope that bad family life doesn't help us, isn't required for us to evolve into more advanced humans.
Yeah, I think you're misreading some of that, and I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time worrying about it. We're gonna be and go where we are, and when we get there, we're gonna have options for how we respond. And you know, I'm appreciative of your list of questions for Christian Sundberg, and I understand as I read those questions that you're still struggling with that fear base.
Right, very much so. I saw that too, and I just thought, well, those are, there they are. Those are things I'd like to ask. I also wanted to ask, I was touched by him that he talked about his own addiction in such an open way.
You talk now about Roman Wyden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how he said there's a God-sized hole in probably everybody, because he said he thought all people were addicts in some form or other, probably some much more intensely addicted than others. That's my thought, not his. But he didn't blame himself, number one, which was wonderful. Number two, he said addiction is all about a God-sized hole that we're trying to fill in ways that are not ideal. I love that too. It did lead me to think and wonder, partly because I'm reading Elizabeth Gilbert's book, and I think, well, I'm not as intensely addicted as she is, and I thought, is there a scale, or because the lengths she went to in her relationship with Rhea, I don't think I would have gone that far. Does that mean I'm healthier? I mean, I've just had a lot of questions. Anywhere you want to hitch into any of those questions would be great, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, boy, that's just, I would, my mind just wants to tell me, exactly what I was saying it out loud as I listened to the podcast from yesterday with Michael talking to, well, it's Andrea who was talking. And I was saying out loud, Andrea, just do worksheets on your fear. You're here, you're having a better time in your life, you're finding the tools that Michael offers that have a great effect, and then a quiet time comes and your mind goes to generating fear. And then you tell your mind, okay, help me figure out how to never let this thing, which hasn't happened, is not happening now, but it did happen sometime in the future, help me prevent it from ever happening again. And you pour your mind energy into that. And as Michael was pointing out, that means you're pouring your mind energy into the trauma. And you're basically setting up this resonance field that will likely bring you into a situation where, and I love the way of mastery talks about this. Life will bring you into a situation where you will have the opportunity to bring a new presence to energies that once defeated you, to energies that once, at one point in time, you used to create the dream of danger and separation. So when these events happen, if I have another car accident, if I have another rape or molestation, if I have another mugging, I will not experience it the way I did before I started using these tools, before I understood my active role in creating my experience of whatever happens. So, the solid recommendation based on these tools and their uses, when you identify that you've got a pattern that's generating fearful thoughts, do what you can with whatever tools resonate best for you to dismantle that pattern in your own thought so you don't keep generating the fear that you want to get rid of. Does that make sense, Susan Bingham?
It all does come down to generating fear. I even had the thought, do I have to get that addicted and hurt myself that badly and be that sleep deprived and that miserable and that addicted to so many things to hit bottom so I can finally get better? I know that's not true, but I'm having thoughts like that while reading her wild book.
I'm going to jump in real quick if that's okay.
Sure.
So yeah, Dr. Tim, I was kind of having the same thoughts. Listened to Andrea yesterday, although I had a word in my mind which maybe is not exactly accurate, but I just felt like she was over intellectualizing, what was going on, and yeah, of course, creating more fear about something that hasn't happened yet. And then with regards to Susan's question about, I guess her name was Elizabeth Gilbert and what she went through in relationship. My personal feeling is that all of human experience is on a spectrum or continuum. I don't care what thing that you look at, people are going to be at different points on that spectrum. And one is not better than the other or worse than the other. It's just different. So I think my personal opinion, well, let me say, one of the best things I've ever heard, I think, in my life is, if you ask the wrong questions, you'll always get the wrong answers. So I don't think the appropriate question would be, do I have to do this to be this? Do I have to suffer so much so that I will be where she was? That's just not the point at all. You don't have to be like someone else or go through the exact same scenario to, achieve a greater sense of peace, understanding, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. Just 2 bits.
Thoughts, Susan?
Looking for my mute button there. Yeah, I think that's true, Dawn. I mean, I was just watching my mind, but also detached from it about Elizabeth Guilford. Definitely, I'm not going to do what she did. Definitely, I can say it is astounding to me, her vitality, her bravery, her all-out, all or nothingness. Those are wonderful things, but they were certainly not being used to her own benefit. She went way far on one end of this, a spectrum, and it isn't necessary. So.
And I think Dr. Tim would agree that it's always, always, always a mistake to compare ourselves to someone else in any regard.
Right.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And, I think Don's point pulls in a lot of different things. It left me with just the Krishnamurti understanding that he shared in conversations even with David Bohm, and you can find those on YouTube, but they're difficult to listen to for my ear because of the sound quality. But where they acknowledge they both, one from a spiritual teacher perspective and one from a physicist perspective, they both discovered there is a fundamental flaw in our human process of thought that is what creates our mental emotional suffering. And so when we create mental emotional suffering through the use of this tool that we call thought, and then we decide we're going to think our way into peace, it never works. So it doesn't matter how many rationalizations you have for how or why you feel the way you do. You're creating every unpleasant experience that you have. You may not be creating the outward stimuli that you're using to generate that experience, but you're the one creating the experience. And you do it by choosing thoughts and then pouring your mind energy into them. So I realize we're at the end of our hour. Thank you both for commenting, and the rest of you for listening and your presence here. It's a blessing for all of us. I'll remind us all that it's a Tuesday, so there will be a support group tonight. And all you would need to join us is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time, most Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we'll